Emily Elizabeth, and I'm the host of the What Fulfills You podcast, a show for and about individuals always seeking to be their best selves. On this show, we talk all about building the mindset, finding the right careers, creating meaningful relationships, and so much more. Welcome to the What Fulfills You podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of What Fulfills You. My name is Emily Elizabeth. I'm your host. And for today's solo episode, I am doing a birthday edition. I have done this every year since I was 25 or since I turned 25. And this year I'm changing it a little bit where instead of giving you 8 lessons, I am sharing it in different buckets. So I am diving into 4 buckets: personal life / career, friendships, love and relationships, and health. And I'm sharing just a little bit of some of the most important nuggets that I have thoroughly reflected on before writing up an outline for this episode. And full transparency, I tend to celebrate my birthday in a belated way, especially because, you know, when you are an adult and your friends live all over the place and you love celebrating with important people in your life, it's kind of hard to pick a certain weekend and celebrate then with all of those people. And so for me this year, I did a tiny celebration with my parents, and I'm also, of course, celebrating with my girlfriends, my partner. And so I share that because for those of you who follow me on Instagram, full transparency, you'll probably see me post a lot of birthday related content for the next 2 to 3 weeks. And I'm sure there are people out there that kind of hate that, and that is fine. I get it. Some people would be like, oh, like your birthday is not a whole month. But for me, birthdays have always been, like, I've never been the type of person that needs to celebrate on the day. I've been more of a person that, like, I call it a celebration when I decide to celebrate, you know? Obviously within reasonable time. Like, I don't wait 2 months later to celebrate, but I think usually within a 3-week span, finding a weekend or an evening where you can kind of like have a celebration with the people you want there, I think is the best feeling ever. And I think one year I did celebrate almost a month later because it was like 3 years ago, but it was when a year after COVID, I think, and I love going to this thing called Miami Music Week. I don't go anymore, but it was totally my favorite thing to do in my college years and a few years after. And it typically is 3 to 4 weeks after my birthday. And so I typically kind of reserve my celebrations for, so I mean, at least that year I reserved my celebrations till we got to Miami. So anyways, all that to say, I look back at 7 years ago when I turned 21. I didn't have the ability to celebrate in this way. Actually, funny enough, not on my 21st birthday, I don't even know what I did on my 21st birthday, like the actual day, but I do know like the night that I was turning 21, so like at midnight I would turn 21, so it was like the 24th going into the 25th. I remember I was actually celebrating another friend's 21st birthday. And so funny enough, that club like had let me in, and I don't even think he said much because he just realized like I'm going to be 21 like by the middle of the night. So for me, it does mean a lot to be able to celebrate with different people in my life, especially girlfriends, because I did not have that in my early 20s. I did not have a solid group, and I've referenced that story before about my 21st birthday. I quite literally only had 2 people at my birthday brunch, and that's totally okay. But looking back, I remember I felt a little sad, I had anxiety, and that's sometimes the case for birthdays. But now I take all these years and I just embrace the fact that I am so fortunate to have women and people in my life today that enjoy celebrating me and want to be there for me and all of that. So anyways, This episode is focused on lessons I have learned and have internalized in my 28 years, a lot of which I think will be valuable for you listening, especially if you have been a longtime listener and you love listening to general lessons and thoughts of mine on all areas of life. Okay, so the first bucket I'm going to focus on is personal life. My biggest lesson in personal life, and this is something I've been heavily thinking about as I've been talking to a friend who has been struggling a bit in navigating their adult life and not sure, whether they should move to a certain place, go back home, like that whole, what am I doing with my life type of thing. And I have so much empathy and understanding with that obstacle because I think that it will and can come up, especially throughout your 20s when you're heavily in that figuring out phase. And by the way, I know I do have a handful of people listening to this podcast that are older than me. And so I'm not saying that you guys wouldn't experience that as well, but I definitely recognize that just the first 10 years out of college, it is a very different bumpy road for each person. And I've seen that and have heard that through conversations with people that are also 10 years older than me. So people who are 37, well into their mid-late 30s have also shared this with me. Biggest lesson is to put yourself first. And what I mean by that when I wrote this down is when I look back on some of the decisions I am grateful for that I've made in my early mid-20s, it is the fact that I did put myself first. Now, I did have a catalyst in my life, and funny enough, I had this conversation last night at my birthday dinner, which is around the lowest point in my life, and it was when I was 20 years old. I was going through a breakup, and that breakup involved, taking care of the dog that we had together. We were living together in the same apartment, and I was transferring universities, so there was so much going on, or so many moving pieces all at once. And it was my first breakup, a first heartbreak. And I had zero friends and zero people to really lean on to just listen and be there as a support system versus sometimes people I think back then, I think my mom wanted to approach it as a problem solver. And that's not, again, I understand the sentiment, but sometimes the best thing you can do for people going through a hard time is just to be there. If they need a phone call, let them call and just listen and just allow them to vent. So remembering that point in my life, after that, I decided, you know what, I am not going to allow myself to feel this way again, because I am the reason I am in this place in the first place. I was complicit in being in the situation that I was. And so I prioritized myself in figuring out my career path. I put myself first by figuring out how to make a sustainable life and take care of myself financially, put food on the table, enjoy the experiences that I want, travel, make new friends, pursue the things that I'm actually interested in. Huge. I would not be where I am today if I had not done that over the years. And if you listen to really old episodes of mine, from 2021, which by the way, even I sometimes listen to gain insight into what was 24-year-old, 25-year-old Emily saying, because a lot of that messaging has not changed. And sometimes I need that reminder because I was probably living it more at that time. And so I do recommend it. If you are interested, 100% go listen to some episodes from 2021. You'll hear some gems in there for sure. But by putting myself first, I also learned how to meet my needs first. If you guys are familiar with the Maslow hierarchy of needs, the first tier is the basics, right? The food, water, shelter. I figured out how to do that first, and I didn't wait for someone else to help me. And I'm not saying that you gotta be some hardcore feminist and that you can't have other people help you, or that you got to do everything by yourself and that you don't need a man or don't need anyone to help you. I'm not saying that at all. But I am saying, whether you are a guy or a girl, to not wait around for someone else to help you. That you have to be willing to help yourself first. And it doesn't matter if eventually, whether it's a male partner or family or older sibling, it doesn't matter if someone does help you, but you have to put in the effort yourself first. And as you do that, you will feel this confidence slowly build up on that part of your life, knowing that, oh wow, Emily is reliable. Oh wow, I can trust myself to actually make my own money and pay for my own rent, or pay for my own trips, or buy this bag that I want. Whatever it is, there is such a rewarding feeling from that. And I'm not saying, again, that for those of you who lean more towards, I want like a guy to be able to take care of me in this way, whatever. I'm not saying, that remove your desire for a certain type of gentleman in your life. But I'm saying that if you learn how to do this, the earlier, the better, you will feel a lot more confident in being able to trust yourself in your own life. And trust me, I share all of this with knowledge and firsthand experience in watching other people, particularly women, well into their 50s and 60s, talk about how they wish they did put themselves first when they were in their 20s, and learn how to meet some of these needs first, because they wouldn't have had to do that basic step when they were well into their 40s or 50s. And maybe that's because they ended up, unfortunately, getting a divorce, or maybe they lost their partner or something of that nature. These things you don't plan for. You don't plan for everything, and not everything is a logical step-by-step move. But for me, in my personal life, I've always wanted to just know that I can always rely on myself, and that the foundation of Emily is firm. And that's what I did when I was 20 years old. I realized that the foundation of Emily was not firm at that time, and I was going to build her up brick by brick and create such a strong foundation for the house that in the future, when hard times happen again, which I knew that they would because it's part of life, I knew that I would not at least be at such that level of a low point, or at the very least, if God forbid that were to be the case, I knew that I had the skills to get through that again and weather the storm of whatever happens in life. And so, speaking on meeting your needs first, yes, go and build a career of some sort. And it doesn't mean that you actually have to be a career woman, because I've talked to some friends or peers that don't want to be a career person or don't have a strong interest to build a career of some sort. I'm not saying that that's something that you have to do, but at the very least, apply yourself in some way where you get to feel the reward of making money and feeding yourself and meeting your basic needs. And over time, maybe that'll allow you to pivot to something different that you actually love and that does also help you make money and help you feed yourself and whatever. Or again, maybe down the road, if and when you have children, maybe you will completely leave the workforce. And, at the very least, you'll be able to look back in any scenario. If you needed to rely on yourself again, you know that you've done it before, so you can do it again. That is a huge building block for trust in yourself. The second bucket I want to focus on is around friendships. Big lesson. I've experienced it plenty of times in my 20s, especially after college. Adult friendships will unfortunately come and go. But through the moments, the highs and lows, it will become more clear to you who will last in your life. And so as you reflect year by year and you think about who's been in your life over the years, who has been a really great friend to you and for you. Take that and recognize it. And something that I have been very mindful of doing over the years, especially because I have had experienced a point in my life where I didn't have close connections and close friendships, I often would pour into the relationships first. I would often be the one to initiate, hey, let's get dinner. Hey, let's go do this. Hey, do you want to join me for this? Be willing to pour into the friendship first. Don't wait around for someone else to initiate with you. This is often the loop that I see people are in. They're waiting for something or someone to come to them. This is also in dating as well, which I can touch on a little bit later. But if you want something in your life, you cannot just sit around and expect that it appears into your lap. Again, it doesn't mean that it's a direct correlation that, oh, I reached out to 5 different people, I'm going to make 2 best friends from this. It's not like a logical, math problem, but I am just saying that the more you show up as a person that you are seeking, the more likely you will attract someone or something like that. And so for me, again, over the years, even with new people or people that I've suspected that they could be a good friend or a good fit in my life, which, by the way, in the recent year, I had one great success, like someone that was new in my life, and we have become really good friends here in New York. And another scenario where I'll share this friendship story for another episode, which it definitely has a great lesson to it. But that one also had a falling out. It was very short-lived and also very short-lived as in like months, and it was very shocking because I think it was a friendship that I had thought that this person had similar values, and I quite honestly thought highly of the person, but the way that they showed up in my life after a specific event was so startling and very concerning that, I of course had to let that friendship go. But again, I had both a great new friend experience and a not so great new friend experience all in the same year. And that's okay. Like, life moves on. It doesn't mean that I have trust issues with making new friends in the future. It just, I think over the years you build that muscle in knowing who's going to be a good fit in your life and who actually shows up consistently in a certain way and most likely shares certain values with you. And one last tidbit on friendships, just like any relationship, you'll know when there is a genuine deep connection on a friend level. It does not take long. You know how people always talk about, you need a couple of dates to know if you vibe with someone. Like, yeah, like yes, but also no, in the sense of after like a first hangout, you can kind of gauge whether you guys have deeper interests that align or that you live in a similar way, or if you guys would be a good fit to go out for dinner together, that kind of thing. That doesn't take like 5 hangouts. You'll typically tell within the first hangout, and hopefully the second time you hang out, it's like a little deeper, more than just getting coffee, and sometimes just a coffee hangout, that's all you need. Sometimes there's just something there that you're like, oh, this person was cool, but I don't think we vibe on a deeper level, and that's okay, right? But for me, I personally have always been the type to pour into other people first, and I've been very lucky to have people pour back into me. And it's just a mantra that I practice, which is I'm going to lead in the way that I hope to receive from other people, not out of expectation, but just simply out of this desire to spread this loving, happy, and connected energy with other people. The third bucket is on love and relationships. So kind of like what I said around friendships, it does not take more than a few dates to know if you really, really like someone and if you would want to pursue something serious together. So this actually does kind of contradict what a recent therapist said on my podcast, which again, everyone's got their own experiences, but I genuinely don't think it makes it easier or better to test the waters, number one, with multiple people, with multiple dates, and number two, sometimes you just don't need to give someone a second date, you know? Like, there is a balance between open-mindedness and wanting to go for a second date just to like, okay, you know what, there is a little bit something here, let me continue to see, versus, you know what, like, something was not, like, I just didn't feel it with that person on the first date. It is okay to just be like, hey, thank you, but no thank you, you know? And I'll give an example of a very close friend of mine, and it's actually a guy. When he met his now girlfriend several months ago, he called me and he told me about it, and he said, you know, I met this girl and there's something about her energy that I just love. It's so different. I love being around her. This was on the first encounter, okay? And they met technically at their one of their job projects, and basically he was a little timid about, you know, like making a move or asking her to hang out because they kind of worked in the same environment together, not at their full-time job. It was basically like a side gig, basically, like that was like once a week or something. And so after that first hangout, he also, once again, he was like, I really like this girl. There's just something about her that I just really like, and I continuously want to get to know her. And they became officially boyfriend and girlfriend after a month, which I personally thought was quite fast. But my point in that is that no, it does not take a few dates to know if you really, really like someone. My guy friend knew off the bat. He knew, like, just hanging out with her, talking with her at their work, he knew that he really liked her. And I think that she also, for her, I think she also liked him in a similar way as well, but was probably a little bit more hesitant in, you know, because of like the context. But I think once he took the lead and he like showed interest and was very trustworthy, and he's such a great guy and great person, she opened up, I think, after like the first or second hangout. And I think that became more evident that they were going in that direction of, this is basically going to turn into a relationship, or we should probably stop hanging out, you know? I have always been like that as well. And personally, I've only been in 3 relationships in total, but all 3 times it was just like the first encounter that I knew, like, oh wow, there is some depth here. There's some, you know, interest in seeing where this could go and seeing where this leads. And there's other times where I have experienced people that I liked, and I did go on like more dates with them or hung out with them more in another way. But in the back of my mind, I knew that there was this element that I just, because of it, I couldn't date that person, or maybe certain values that definitely were not present that would be important to me, you know? I would say that's a huge lesson in love and relationships on both sides, which is also something that has given me peace. If a guy, after our first date, he didn't want to go out with me again or did not show forward moving interest with me, I was not offended. And I also took that as a signal of, hey, thanks, but no thanks, you know, because I know that, again, because of this experience myself and hearing several other men specifically talk about this experience, it does not take them a lot to know if they really want to be with this girl. And that gives me peace, because then I don't have to guess too much, you know? And I've been there. I think in my college years, or at some point after, I probably was always in like a guessing game with myself. And once I really came to terms with the fact that, hey, if they want to be with you, they'll be with you. It's as simple as that. I didn't add too much pressure. That also goes with saying that it didn't mean I withdrew. It didn't mean that I played games with them, but I was always pretty, number one, like I reciprocate if I like them. And number 2, I'm also very open and honest. And I tell someone, hey, I really like you, you know, if I needed to like be the one to express that. But oftentimes I never had experienced something where it felt one-sided, thankfully. But maybe if someone had asked me out for a second date and I just knew that I was not going to be romantically inclined, I have experienced before telling people, hey, absolutely enjoyed our first date together, and I genuinely would love to continue this as a friendship. I'm happy to get lunch if you would like to connect as friends. And that's, again, I think the mature thing to do if you don't want to ghost and you also want to be respectful of other people's time and other people's energy, because I'll tell you this, however you leave it with a guy or girl or whoever, they'll remember that. And if you leave it in a way where maybe it hurts their ego for a little bit, I promise you they'll always respect you if you handle it in a respectful way, kind and respectful way. Another core lesson I have always known in love and relationships, especially since my first relationship, but I think something I thought was noteworthy to emphasize: when you really love someone and you really feel something for someone, and this even goes in the initial dating period, doesn't mean that you love them yet or you deeply love them yet, but you feel something, of course, more than just normal with them. It will make you feel weird and just like icky to even think about being with someone else. And if you've been there before, then you know what I'm talking about. But this feeling is very evident internally. Like it just feels weird. Like you can't even imagine it. It makes you feel like icky, And so that also goes with any of you, if you ever question yourself, if you really love someone. Again, I'm not saying I'm a therapist or a psychologist or know this on a scientific level, but I can attest to the fact that, like when I have experienced real love, just every other guy, it's invisible. Like you can't imagine that because that just feels weird. And then lastly, I have to say, especially throughout my 20s, embrace the tough times with dating and love. It is meant to be a part of the process. Even I wish I could avoid it, but I know better, and I know that I can't avoid the natural feeling of potentially getting hurt with dating and love and relationships. And I have been through 2 heartbreaks myself, and I have come out of it better. And, it's just meant to be part of the human experience. And so my best insight there is to just embrace it if and when it happens, and also be there for your friends when they experience it, because I think the only thing I really could ask for in the times that I was going through those low moments was just a friend to be there, to maybe check in on me, to just allow me to talk a little bit, to vent with them. And I was lucky to have that the second time around. I did have some friends I was able to call and just talk with. And while it did not ease the pain, it allowed me the comfort of knowing, hey, you've got people here, you will be okay. And that was definitely a lot more helpful than the first time around, where I didn't quite have that experience. It was a lot more alone. But embrace it, you guys. It will happen. The thing I always say is you can't have the best without the worst. And so kind of choose as you will. Choose the path and choose what you want to live with. Do you want the best parts about love? Well, then you're going to also have to accept the other unfortunate parts that also come with that human experience. The last bucket I'm going to touch on is health and the way you take care of yourself. So I would say over the past year in 2024, I went through probably a bigger shift in my physical and overall health than other years. And so my biggest lesson on physique and health and building the physique that you actually want is that it does take a long time. It takes a while. And so you might as well put yourself through it day by day. And I think the core lessons I've applied in the past year, so this is like a newer lesson for sure, but I've always lifted and I've always done weights, but I definitely didn't start lifting heavier quicker until this year. So for example, I think a year ago, I was doing bicep curls probably with 10 pounds, and I would probably do 15 reps. And again, that is still better than nothing, but I've noticed my physique being more built and more toned by lifting heavier. And I know a lot of people in the health space talk about this too. But for example, if you guys follow me on Instagram, you know how I look, you know my physique. I'm 5'6". I am, full transparency, like slightly under 130 pounds. And I lift 14 to 16 pounds for bicep curls. So I'll do 14 pounds and maybe 10 reps on each arm. If I'm lifting 16, I'll probably do 7 reps on each arm. And like it's going to be like hard. It's meant to feel hard and tough. But if you have seen my biceps or my arms, you probably know that they're not actually big, but I do indeed lift 14 to 16. So for example, if you're someone right now that's doing the 10-pound thing, honey, like 100% bump that up to 12 pounds or 14 pounds. Go heavier with less reps and like 3 to 4 rounds. So I'll usually do heavy weights, 3 rounds, and that'll be like my workout session. I make it quick. And of course, on top of that, eating well is very important. And so this year, or rather a year ago, I started becoming even more mindful about my eating choices. I really focus on eating all colors of the rainbow. So the salads, my greens, my oranges, my reds, I really focus on all of that. Again, I'm not perfect at it yet. I do love following people in the holistic health space to follow that. But that's something I focus on, especially for my skin, for my internal health, my gut, and I have been extremely mindful of my protein intake. So I've had nutritionists on my podcast before, and I would definitely try to link those in the show notes, but I do focus on 30 grams of protein per meal. So for example, breakfast, I actually typically do 3 to 4 eggs in the morning. That's not 30 grams, like 1 egg is 6 grams. So 3 eggs would be 18, 4 eggs would be 24, but I then usually try to get other protein in there. But that is a huge lesson and takeaway I've had in my 20s is just building out the physique that I want. I have to be willing to work a little harder in certain areas. And of course, just drinking water daily, first thing in the morning for sure. And with health, it is easily the most important aspect of my life because without good health, I would not be able to perform. I would not be able to do this podcast. I would not be able to show up and feel happy. I would not be able to hang out with my friends, and our health is just the foundation of how we live our life. So it is so crucial to me on the way I take care of myself, the way I eat, what I feed my mind, who I spend time with. All of it is very important to me. And if you listen to this podcast and you like some of the health aspects I share, then I hope some of those lessons were helpful. Last but not least, it's something I've shared on, I think, every birthday edition episode. But this is around this philosophy and saying that I've talked about for years now after hearing the founder of Tom's Shoes share this. He said, "Carpe diem, seize the moment." He talked about how he signs his emails Carpe diem because he lost his best friend, I think at the age of 18, on a flight accident. And so when I heard that, I really took it to heart. I think I was 24 at the time, maybe even 23. And so it's something that I truly follow in my own life, which is carpe diem, seize the moment, because life is too short. And we forget that when we put ourselves on this loop, whether we're taking really long to take action on something, or we're in our head about sending the text to someone that we're thinking about. Why wait? Wait for what, right? And this also goes with experiencing things in life. If you want to go and travel somewhere, then save up money and go travel. Stop waiting for someone else to come with you. Or, you want that job or you want a career change, then go and do it. Seize the moment. Because in any given moment, it could go away. That also goes with tell the people that you love, tell them daily. You can be that weird friend, let them know, tell them that you love them, tell them that you appreciate them, because you just never know. And I have it deeply ingrained in my head because I don't know, for some reason that messaging just touches me. And I have spent some parts of my life, especially my early 20s, in my head too much, wondering, is this too much to say? Is this too much to do? And you don't want to be chaotic or irrational with your decisions. But at the same time, if you're constantly hesitating to do something, maybe it's time to think about this carpe diem philosophy or mentality, whatever you want to call it. And I'll leave you guys with this quote that I love. It is from Steve Jobs, who is, of course, no longer here with us. But he said in his, I believe, Stanford graduation speech, "Remembering that you're going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason to not follow your heart." And that was all for today's birthday edition episode. Thank you so much for tuning in today and all the times that you do tune in. If you are a regular listener, I would love to connect with you. Just DM me on Instagram at Emily E. Duong or at What Fulfills You. Share this episode with a friend or post it on your Insta story. And if you do share it on your Insta story, make sure to tag me at Emily E. Duong so I can repost and share with others. Thank you again for tuning into this episode. I will chat with you all in the next one.